So after 2 years in Florida, I decided to move back to Colorado Springs. In this video, I want to go over why my wife and I moved back to Colorado Springs to see if you can kind of relate and get an idea if you want to call it home too. My name's Ben, and in this channel we make videos about what it's like to live and move to Colorado Springs. Also, we are a team of realtors and would love to earn your business, so if you are getting any value out of these videos, give us a call, text, we'd love to see how we can help. So in the last 7 years, I've honestly moved so many times, I'm starting to lose track. And in October of 2023, my wife and I decided to make the hard decision to move back. So quick backstory for a little extra context. Bear with me, it is a little bit chaotic. So I was born in South Carolina, and when I was like 5, my family moved to Colorado Springs. So I went to elementary, middle, high school, kind of had most of my formative years in Colorado Springs. And then I moved to a small town in northwest Arkansas for college. So the summer of my freshman year of college, I moved back to Colorado Springs to work for the summer. And I actually ended up meeting my wife, who was also working at the coffee shop, Zoe. And then I ended up moving back to Arkansas, where we were dating long distance. Meanwhile, Zoe's family ended up actually moving to the Austin area, and she stayed in Colorado. But then shortly after, she ended up moving to Texas so that she could save some money to then move to Arkansas. So the following summer, I ended up moving down to Texas to spend some time with her and her family. And then soon after that, Zoe ended up moving back with me to Arkansas, where we lived for a couple years until I graduated. And then we moved back to Colorado Springs, stayed there for 2 years, and then moved to Florida for 2 years, where we were at recently. And then this is kind of present day, where we decided to move back to Colorado Springs in October 2023. So I really say this to just emphasize how many states I've lived in, kind of the broad experience I've had. So I've lived in Texas, Colorado, Arkansas, and Florida. And after kind of having lived in all those states, still decided to make the decision to move back to Colorado Springs because I think it's the best spot for us, and really kind of want to flesh out those reasonings. And this is just like purely my subjective experience, and this video is a little bit less factual and more so just my personal opinion and why I'm choosing to call it home. So one of the reasons that we moved back is just the like elevation profile. So making it sound complicated, but really it's nice that Colorado Springs isn't so flat. In like a lot of the states we've been to, Texas, Florida, they're just really flat. And the variance with the mountains, it just adds a lot of visual depth. And then obviously with this, you have the mountains right there in Colorado Springs and quick access to trails and hiking. So it's just a lot easier to get outdoors and do things, versus in a lot of other states, you really don't have many hiking trails and it's just a little bit harder to be active. So this was kind of one of the big reasons that we moved back. And for like a little more context, with the mountains being so close, like after a long day of working, can easily just hop on a trail and like climb a mountain in the middle of the week for like a middle of the week refresh. Did this recently with my friend Jake. So we climbed Blodgett Peak, which is kind of on the western side of Colorado Springs, just near Rock Rimmon, and it's like 9,500 feet. It's like a mile and a half just straight uphill. So it's not that long, it's like 3 miles total, but the elevation gain is insane. Honestly though, you really can't beat the views from the top. So if you are in the area and want a hard hike to do, really recommend this one. But yeah, just really nice to have such close access to all the trails. So the second reason that we decided to move back is just because of how dog friendly Colorado Springs is. So there are like tons of different dog parks. One of our favorite dog parks is the Bear Creek Dog Park, located on the western side of Colorado Springs, kind of near like old Colorado City, and super pretty views. It's a really expansive dog park, and there's tons of dog parks similar to this. Also, it can be really hard to find rentals in a lot of states that allow dogs. And to get settled into the area, we did decide to rent a house for the time being. And we actually found a rental that allowed 4 dogs, which I feel like compared to a lot of states, this is not the norm. And then honestly, like when you go into like a brewery or a coffee shop or even like Home Depot or Lowe's, there's just like always dogs everywhere. And for me, it's just nice to have like a good conversation starter with a stranger to pet their dog, say hey, So it just kind of adds to that like community aspect too. And there was like a recent study that Pet Labco did, just like a supplement company, where they apparently ranked Colorado Springs as like the #1 city for pet friendliness. So I don't know how accurate that is, but kind of just a factoid to add to my point. So the third real reason that we decided to move back was just because of the community. So we felt a little bit disconnected in Florida, and that's maybe on us, but in Colorado Springs, had some pre-existing friends, and it just feels a little bit easier to get connected here. And I think part of that's just because people in Colorado Springs feel just like a little bit more friendly, and maybe it's just like a surface level friendliness, but overall for me, and maybe it's just what I'm used to, found it a little bit more appealing than places like Florida, where a bunch of people are from like the Northeast, and I'm probably gonna get a lot of crap in the comments, but I just feel like people in Colorado Springs are just a little bit friendlier than other places. Also, I think part of that too is honestly like the age of people in Colorado Springs. So where we were at in Tampa in Pinellas County, which is kind of like the coastal side of Tampa, the average age was like 48 years old, and no disrespect for people in that kind of stage of life, but just a little bit harder to connect with people that are in a different stage of life. So when Zoe and I moved back to Colorado Springs, one of the first things that we noticed when we walked into a coffee shop was like just how many young people there are. And it's not like the average age has decreased in Colorado Springs recently. It's just more so seeing the like stark contrast between Tampa and Colorado Springs. Tampa honestly just kind of gives retirement vibes in some spots. And then another reason that we decided to move back was just because of the balance of the amount of things to do. So like compared to Florida specifically, Florida honestly does have a lot to do, and we didn't want to lose out on all the things that we could go do. So it's nice because in Colorado Springs, you're not really losing that too much. You may have to go to Denver to do some things, like if you want to go to sports games or concerts or whatnot. But aside from that, there are still just a ton of things to do, whether it's going hiking or trying new restaurants or whatnot. And Colorado Springs is growing quite a bit, so they are like building more and more things. So recently they just announced that they were actually doing a renovation project at the Scar, which is like a old quarry, which they just decided to dig rock straight from the mountain in a very viewable spot. But yeah, they decided to reclaim that recently and are actually building like a giant mountain biking course. And then they also are building a big open air amphitheater in the Northgate area that'll have like a lot of bigger name artists, and honestly just showcases how much Colorado Springs is growing and what type of things they're starting to build. Also, I did mention that like you have to go to sporting events in Denver, but they do have a couple sports teams here. So you have the Air Force Falcons, the college team, where they have a variety of different sports, and then you have the Colorado Springs Switchbacks, which are a minor league soccer team. And then, like I mentioned, if you want to do something that you can't really do in Colorado Springs, it's like an hour and a half drive. You can go up to Denver, and that for us is just really appealing because we can have cheaper cost of living in Colorado Springs and then commute to Denver if we do want to go do anything that Colorado Springs doesn't offer. And honestly, be further removed from all the traffic. And the fifth and kind of final big reason that we decided to move back to Colorado Springs is a reason that I honestly think a lot of people don't know, and that's just how many houses, if you look at like a distribution of like the cheaper and like the more expensive houses, Colorado Springs, although it's not cheap per se, has more houses in the kind of lower range. So you have quite a few houses in like the 350, 375 to 500 range, compared to places like Tampa, where it just felt like there was a lot of houses in like the 300 range where they were cheap and not that nice, and then it just went really expensive. So it feels like the distribution of houses is just a little more friendly towards people who are kind of just getting into the market, and honestly is just a little bit easier to enter the real estate market. And honestly too, in Florida, the property insurance is really expensive, especially if you're going to be by the coast, which we kind of wanted to be, because a lot of times you're going to have things like flood insurance and just kind of tax on to the price to own a house. So obviously Colorado Springs, you're not really by any water, so you don't need to worry about flood insurance. But yeah, overall I just think there's a lot of houses kind of in this lower lower price tier, and that just makes it a little bit easier to enter the world of real estate. So that kind of does it for our reasonings as to why we're moving back to Colorado Springs. And let us know in the comments what some of the reasons you're considering moving here are, so other people can kind of get an idea if it's right for them. Also, if you're watching this far into the video, you should consider subscribing if you're getting any value out of this.